Are you ready to take a deeper dive into a review on the Premier sock kit? Let's get started. Hey y'all, I'm Erica from the LopsidedCrafter.com. Today I am going to go over my first impressions of the Premier sock kit, the multi-sock kit that I did an unboxing of and a review of the yarn itself in a previous video. This video is going to be filmed over several days because I am actually testing the yarn and the sock on a knitting loom. This kit is called Citrus and Sunshine. You get 2 of the main color skeins and 1 of your contrast color. This one is called Citrus and Sunshine. So, the main color comes with 229 yards or 50 grams. It is 50% superwash merino wool, 25% rayon from bamboo, and 25% nylon. The contrast color has the same fiber content, but it is 114 yards and 25 grams. So I have made a sock on the loom. This is a vanilla sock with the fleagle heel. I did the contrast color for the toe and for the cuff. So for this particular sock, I used exactly 23.6 grams of the main color, which is 108.08 yards. And for the contrast color, I used 6.9 grams, which is 31.46 yards. Now, I did this on the 64 peg loom from CinDwood Crafts. This is a 1/4 inch, and it is custom because I had them put the special pegs in for the fleagle heel, and it's marked out for my short rows for the toe. This would be one of the typical looms that I would use for a sock. So my first impression is this sock is way too big. Now, I do want to preface that I have not washed this sock yet, meaning I have not soaked it and let it dry. So the first impressions, that's why this is going to be a multi-day video. The first impressions are the sock is too big. Now, having said that, sometimes you need to wash or soak certain fibers to get the yarn to relax. So what I am doing here is I am showing you this sock before it's been washed. Now, if you see my tails, I will say a tip is that I never ever, especially when it's a garment, and this is considered a garment because it's worn, I never ever secure my tails until I know it's the size is going to work out. Typically, like I said, I wear a sock made on the 64 peg loom, and it is a perfect fit. This, like I said, came out huge. So I'm thinking that it is the rayon. So I wanted to show you guys before and after. We're going to be able to see what this looks like now. I will come back when this has been washed and dried and film again and give my second opinion. However, I'm going to go a step further, and I am going to go down to a 60 peg 1/4 inch loom and make another sock to see if this one on a 60 peg loom instead of the 64 peg loom will fit any different. I'm wondering, because of the rayon content, if the sock itself fits differently than if it was just wool and nylon. So I want to give everybody an exact in-depth review of this yarn. Like, do I feel like you need to go down a loom size, or is it simply just soaking the sock to let it relax to make it fit? So that is the test that we are doing. And as I said, this one was done on the 64 peg loom with a Flegel heel, because as it sits right now, it is too big. I am a size 7.5, 7.5, depending on the shoe. My son is a 9.5. He tried it on and it fit him in the length, but the leg for him as well as for me was way too big, way too big. The length fit him. The length was too long for me, using the same amount of rows that I normally use for my sock. So, could it have been the heel? Maybe. But to do a true test, I am going to do the same heel on the next pair, or the next sock, so that we can get a true comparison. The next time I see you, we will have our sock soaked and dried, and I will have tried it on and to give you an updated opinion, and I will have my next sock completed on the 60 peg loom. Okay, we are back. As a recap, this sock was done on a 64 peg loom. This one was done on a 60 peg loom. The 64 peg sock has been soaked and dried and tried back on, and it's still too big. Went with the 60 peg loom, and the leg is still too big and the foot is slightly too small. Now, I do have a wide foot. That's why I normally do a 64 peg. I'm thinking that it has a lot to do with the rayon that is in it. The rayon and bamboo, where it is not just a strictly wool nylon blend. Would I make more socks on the loom with this yarn? Right now, I'm going to say yes. Yes, I would. I would probably end up using the 60 peg loom. Now, I will say the gauge on the 60 peg loom and the 64 peg loom, not the gauge on the loom itself, but the gauge of the stitches is exactly the same for me. That does not mean that it will be exactly the same for you. That all depends on your tension. But for me, it was exactly the same. Just a little bit of notes here. For the 64 peg sock, I did my toe, 62 rounds for the foot. Then I worked the Flegel heel. And then from here up the leg, I did 55 rows and 20 rows for the cuff. On the 60 peg sock, I did the toe, and I did 60 rows for the foot, worked the Flegel heel. I did 55 rows for the leg and 20 rows for the cuff. So now we are going to actually weigh our yarn and see how much we used for the second sock. So we have exactly 30 grams left, and then I'm going to actually weigh the contrast color also, but we will have to do a little bit of math based on what we used for the other size. So we have 11.8 grams left of that. And then we will get back to these numbers in just a minute. I want to go over this sock a little bit with you. So as you can see, it does have some stretch. So when you take a sock off the loom, you definitely want to stretch it, because these stitches up here at your cuff, especially if you're doing a rib, the knit stitches will kind of be separated. So you got to kind of pull at those stitches to kind of get them to relax. I use the chain cast off, and I know a lot of people don't like to use that because of the flare. But on my normal wool nylon blend socks, that extra flare gives me that just a little bit more stretch when I'm going to put the sock on. So that's why I always tend to use that bind off. I did use the Kitchener cast on for this. And I am actually trying to work on another video for you guys of a different way to do this cast on. I know a lot of people don't like to use the Kitchener cast on because they feel like you're wasting yarn. But a little tip for that, whenever I am just about done with the foot, I go ahead and close the Kitchener, which is right through here. I go ahead and close that up, and then I use what's left. If I'm using a different color heel, I'll use it on the heel, and if I'm doing a cuff, I will do it on the cuff. But so the Kitchener cast on doesn't have to waste yarn. The feel is nice. You can feel the wool in it. It is a little toothy, but not scratchy, if that makes sense. It felt more comfortable on my foot than it with the touch of the hand. Again, I think I would use it for another sock on the loom, maybe trying a different heel to see if the sock fits any better, or if I hesitate to say if the gauge changes, because you know when you're using the loom, your tension is your tension no matter what. Would this work better on a different type of loom, say like the KB Flexi looms? Possibly. I have 2 more kits, and I can say pretty confidently without going to the computer and doing the math that there's probably enough left to do another pair of socks if they're shorty socks. We will figure that out when we get to the computer. I'm gonna say probably not enough to do a complete toe and heel or cuff, but maybe enough to do just a toe. Would I knit these with needles? Yes. Would I buy another kit? I don't know. I honestly do not know the answer to that. Is the kit a great price? Yes, it absolutely is a great price. I'm just not 100% sold on the rayon content within the sock. There are certain materials that make my hands just want to perspire, and I think it is the rayon content. So I'm not sure how I feel about them on my feet. I will wear them while I am out on my medical leave and give you a fair review at a later date. Okay, so let's go to the computer. I created a new spreadsheet with all the information in it that I use whenever I am making a sock, so that if I am going to make another one with the same yarn for the same person, all of my information is there. So I'm going to show you what all I look for, what all I put in, and how I determine how many grams and yards that I actually used per item. So let's head over to the computer and do that. Okay, so here is the spreadsheet that I use for my loom knit socks. Whenever I am making a sock for somebody, whether it's me or I'm doing a test or anything like that, I can write down all the information into this spreadsheet, and then it's there whenever I need to refer back to it or if I want to duplicate the sock. So as you can see right here, this is the first one that I did. So what I do is I put in the stitch pattern and a pattern. So if it's a specific pattern that that belongs to me that I've designed, or somebody else's pattern, I would put there. For this, I actually put Vanilla Sock 1, Fleagle Heel, and Test. Then I said, did it work? So I have drop down options here, yes, no, maybe. So this is for the first one. I made it for myself. It's toe up. I used the Kitchener cast on. I wear a size 7.5 shoe size. I used the CinDwood round loom. So I did this because I want to know if the loom was round, if it's oval, if it's rectangular. All that information is right there. So I know exactly which loom to use to duplicate the sock. 1/4 inch. Now, there's a lot of information on this spreadsheet. My loom gauge was 1/4 inch. I used 64 pegs. My toe was a short row. I used 32 pegs for the toe, which is half of the loom. 10 of those were for the toe bed, so that's the 10 in the middle with the short row shaping pegs on the side. The pegs on each side of the toe bed is 11, so that would be 11, 10, 11. I did 62 rounds after the toe before I reached the heel. 55 rounds for the leg, 20 for the cuff, and then the type of heel I did was the Fleagle. Now, because I did the Fleagle heel, I have to have additional math here. So for the heel, I actually used 42 pegs. 10 pegs were in the middle, so those same 10 pegs that were in the middle for the toe are the same 10 pegs that were in the middle for the heel. And then there was 16 on each side of those 10. For the yarn, I wrote down all the information: the 50% superwash wool, 25% rayon, 25% nylon, and I put in here Premier Sock Kit. That was for the main color and the contrast color. So for the main color, there was 50 grams in the ball and 229 yards. So for the main color, for the first sock, I used 23.6 grams of yarn, which is 108.08 yards. There was 25 grams and 114 yards total in that contrast color ball. And I used 6.9 grams or 31.46 yards in the first sock. And then it was Citrus and Sunshine was the colorway. So now we're going to enter our information for the second sock. And I got my notes right here. So we will be adding all of this in here together. I'm not going to put yes or no here yet. Well, actually, I'm going to put maybe, because the foot is just a titch too small, but the leg is still too big. But I think that the foot will stretch out over time. So I'm going to put maybe here. So again, a lot of this stuff is still the same. It's for me, toe up. We used the Kitchener cast on, same size shoe, round loom, 1/4 inch gauge, but we used 60 pegs. 30 pegs were for the toe, and then we had 10 pegs that were in the middle with 10 pegs on each side. Now, for the rows to the start of the heel, I did 60. For the leg, I did 55, and I did 20 for the cuff. It was the Fleagle heel, and pegs for the heel were 40. And then we did 10 for the heel bed pegs, and there were 15 on each side of that. My yarn content is the same. So now we get to our yarn. So again, it was 50 grams, 229 yards, and it was Citrus and Sunshine. So we had 30 grams left of the main color. So that means that we used exactly 20 grams of yarn. So when I put that 20 grams in, it automatically tells me that I used 91.6 yards. And that's because I have my formulas in here. For the contrasting color, because they only gave me one ball of the contrasting color, I am going to have to figure out, I used 6.9 grams of that 25 for my original. 25 minus 6.9 is 18.1. And then I had 11.8 left. So I used 6.3 grams from the contrast color on the second sock. So we know over here that we have 25 grams in the original ball and 114 yards. So that tells me that I used 28.72 yards of that contrasting color. So let's figure this out. If I used 6.9 and 6.3 for the contrasting color, I used 13.2 grams of that 25 grams for the toe and the cuff. And then I used, of 100 grams, I only used, like, we'll round it up to 45 grams. So what that's telling me is I can get 2 pairs of socks out of one kit on the loom. That's what that's telling me. Now again, that's with my gauge, meaning the 1/4 inch, my tension, and things like that. So it's always best to write down, like I said, your information so you have this to look, you know, to refer back to. But for me and the way that I loom knit, I know that I can get 2 pairs of socks out of each kit for the loom, which that in itself is good because $25 for the kit, $24.99, and 2 pairs of socks. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. That is definitely a pretty good deal. If you would like me to go in depth any further on how I create this spreadsheet as far as the math for your calculations and things like that, please let me know. I have no problem with sharing that with you. I also do it for my regular patterns. If it's a design, anything that I'm working on, this is all a new spreadsheet. That's why I wanted to share it with you. And then for the math little part that I have right here, this is how I figured out what I needed for that Flegel heel. But I've already done a video on that as far as how to mark a 60 peg loom, and then I show you how to do the math for both the 60 peg and the 64 peg loom. And that may have come out before this video or after this video, but it is on my channel. So I hope that you have enjoyed this deep dive, in-depth review of the Premier sock kit. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And as of now, and I know I have said this many times within this video, so if you're still watching, here we are on replay again, but as of now, I am still happy with the kit. I just am not 100% sure about the rayon. And that's how I'm going to leave it for now. So until next time, happy loom knitting. Bye.